Episode 7. Iris Murdoch, The Sovereignty of Good. Seeing Clearly in a World Full of Illusion. Part 1. Hook. The Fog Around Us. Let me begin with a moment, one you may know intimately even if you've never spoken it aloud. A young woman named Evelyn sits alone in her apartment. It's late. Not the cozy kind of late where soft lamplight warms the room, but the sterile blue glow of a screen, casting long shadows over her tired face. Her phone lies in her palm, and she scrolls endlessly. Outrage, comparison, snark, anxiety, opinions hurled like stones. People she's never met shouting about causes she barely understands. Arguments she wishes she hadn't read. Images she wishes she hadn't compared herself to. She feels hollow, like a fog has settled between her and the world, between her and herself. She closes her eyes, but even in the darkness, the scrolling continues. Not with her thumb, but in her mind. Finally, overwhelmed, I don't know what's real anymore. And maybe, if you strip away the specifics, you've felt a version of that too. A feeling that your vision, moral, emotional, existential, has gone blurry. Like something in you that used to be sharp, discerning, attentive, has been dulled by noise, distraction, ego, and fear. We live in an age of almost infinite information, and yet we see each other less clearly than ever. We know more facts, but we understand less. We communicate more, but connect less. We react faster, but reflect less. We perform morality online, but practice it less in real life. Something profound has been lost, something Iris Murdoch believed was the foundation of moral life, the ability to see reality clearly. And that brings us to a question she spent her entire life trying to answer. Why is it so hard to truly see the world and the people in it as they are? Tonight, I want to walk with you through her answer. Not academically, not dryly, but as a philosophical journey toward clarity, goodness, and the quiet art of attention. Because Murdoch believed morality wasn't about willpower or rules or grand heroic choices. She believed morality is about vision, about clearing the fog. And if we can understand her, if we can see what she saw, we may just find our way back to a clearer, more compassionate life in a world that desperately needs it. This is Philosophy for Better Humans, and I'm Charles Sebastian Whitby. Let's step into the fog and learn how to see again. Part 2. Introduction. Iris Murdoch and the Moral Emergency of Our Time. Before we go any further, let me tell you something about Iris Murdoch you may not know. She wasn't just a philosopher or a novelist or a thinker. She was a seer, a person who paid attention with extraordinary depth, someone who saw through the illusions of the self and the illusions of society with uncomfortable clarity. When people talk about her book, The Sovereignty of Good, they often misinterpret it as a religious argument, or a moral system, or an abstract treatise. But it's none of those things. It is a manual for seeing. It is a diagnosis of the soul's blindness in an age where noise exhales sharply distorts everything. Murdoch believed, radically, that the central human struggle is not between good and evil as dramatic opposites. The real struggle is between fantasy and reality, between the ego's comforting stories and the world as it actually is. And she argued that the most powerful moral force in our lives is not willpower or virtue signaling or ideological conviction, but attention. The quality of attention we give to others, the attention we give to beauty, the attention we give to our own inner life, the attention we give to truth. Attention, for Murdoch, was the spiritual technology that made goodness possible. And what is our age if not an attention crisis? Your attention is pulled by notifications, scrolling, algorithms, advertising, politics, fear, comparison, habit, impulse, vanity. We are drowning in stimuli, yet starving for meaning. Murdoch saw this coming long before smartphones, long before TikTok, long before the modern attention economy. She believed we were losing something sacred, the ability to look at another human being and truly see them. Not through the lens of our ego, not through the lens of our mood, not through the lens of our narratives, but clearly, lovingly, patiently, truthfully. She believed this was the foundation of moral life. And if we fail at this, if we lose the capacity for clear moral vision, we lose the world. Tonight, we're going to explore why the ego blinds us, why attention is the moral muscle we never train, why beauty frees us from self-absorption, why goodness is something we see, not something we decide, and how Murdoch's philosophy can save modern relationships, politics, and personal meaning. This is not a surface-level episode. This is a deep dive into the soul. So let's begin at the heart of Murdoch's insight, the place where she believed all moral confusion begins. The fantasy-making self. Part 3. The fantasy-making ego, our inner distortion machine. Picture the human mind as an artist, a brilliant artist, but one who cannot help painting the world in self-flattering ways. You meet someone rude, your mind instantly paints a story. They're arrogant, they're cruel, they're out to get me, they're the problem. Rarely, almost never, does the mind say, maybe they're in pain, maybe I misunderstood, maybe this has nothing to do with me. This reflexive, self-centered explanation, this automatic projection, is what Murdoch called the illusion of the self. The ego, she believed, is not evil, it's just limited, narrow, desperate to protect itself, full of fear and insecurity. And because it's limited, it does something tragic. It confuses its own fantasies for reality. Let me give you an example. Simple, ordinary, human. A friend doesn't text back. Hours pass. A day, 2 days. What does the mind do? It tells a story. They're upset with me. They're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They don't care about me. But in reality, they were overwhelmed, or sick, or distracted, or caring for someone else, or simply not in the mental space to talk. Your story was a fantasy. Your ego was the author. Murdoch believed that most of our suffering, our resentment, our anger, our self-righteousness, our misinterpretations, come from these ego-generated fictions. We don't see other people. We see the stories our ego paints about them. This is why she said the important moral challenge is to silence the self. Not permanently, not violently, not in self-neglect, just long enough to see the world as it is, and not as our fear wants it to be. But the ego is loud, it is needy, it is relentless. So how do we silence it? Murdoch's answer is revolutionary. We don't silence the ego through force. We silence it through attention. And the moment you hear that word, the moment Murdoch begins to redefine it, you realize her philosophy is not just moral theory. It is a way to live, a way to love, a way to see. So let's go deeper. Part 4. Attention. The quiet, revolutionary moral act. Murdoch's idea of attention is not the attention of productivity hacks. It's not focus. It's not concentration. It's not pay attention. No, attention for Murdoch is moral vision. Attention is the quiet, patient turning of the mind toward reality. Let me illustrate with a story she herself used. A mother disapproves of her daughter-in-law. She thinks the young woman is silly, superficial, tiresome. But over months, quietly, humbly, the mother begins to attend to the daughter-in-law with more honesty and less ego. She notices a different laugh, a sincerity in her eyes, a talent for kindness, a shy wisdom, a depth she hadn't seen. The daughter-in-law does not change. The mother's vision changes. That is the moral achievement. Murdoch writes, "Moral change is a matter of changing the quality of one's attention. Not willpower, not rules, not discipline. Attention. Seeing reality instead of seeing ego." This is one of the most important moral insights of the last century, and one of the most neglected. Because we live in a world that fractures our attention into 1,000 pieces. We live in a world that monetizes distraction. We live in a world that rewards outrage. We live in a world that encourages us to perform morality rather than perceive it. Murdoch offers a countercultural remedy. Look at the world. Look at people. Look with patience. Look without judgment. Look without rushing to interpret. In other words, learn to see. Because seeing clearly is the foundation of being good. Part 5. Unselfing. The moment the ego falls away, Murdoch has a word for the moment when attention dissolves the ego. Unselfing. Let me give you a moment of unselfing. Evelyn, the woman from our opening story, walks to her window one morning. Her mind is noisy, cluttered, preoccupied with grievances, worries, comparisons. But outside the window, on a telephone wire, a small bird lands. Just sits there, quiet, still. A tiny piece of beauty, unaware of Evelyn's insecurities. She looks at the bird, and for a moment, just a moment, the self dissolves. Her mind empties. Her breathing slows. Her heart softens. She is no longer inside her anxious narratives. She is simply seeing. This is unselfing. Murdoch writes that beauty, whether in nature, art, music, or kindness, has the power to pull us out of ourselves. Beauty says, "Look at me," instead of looking at your own fears. Unselfing is not self-erasure, it is self-transcendence. The ego drops away and reality comes into focus. This is not mystical, it is profoundly human. It is the moment when we see another person not as a character in our story, but as a full, real, living being, with fears and hopes and depth of their own. Unselfing is the seed of compassion. Unselfing is the seed of wisdom. Unselfing is the seed of virtue. This is where goodness begins. And it brings us to Murdoch's most difficult, breathtaking insight. The good is real, and we get glimpses of it when we see clearly. End of part 1. When you're ready, Joey, just say, "Continue to part 2, and I'll move into the good as a transcendent presence. How ego fantasy destroys modern life. Love as clear vision. The moral crisis of our era. How Murdoch's philosophy can heal today's world. Practical clarity practices told narratively." This episode is going to be powerful. Part 6. The good as a real, objective presence. Let's step carefully now, because we're entering the most misunderstood and most profound part of Murdoch's philosophy. When Iris Murdoch says the good, she does not mean goodness as a set of moral rules, or as religious doctrine, or as personal preference, or as social norms. For Murdoch, the good is real, objective, independent, beyond us, beyond language, beyond ideology. She believed the good is like a mountain, so large that no matter where you stand, you only ever see a small part of it. You can't grasp it, you can't own it, you can't argue it into existence. You can only move toward it. Her metaphor is simple but breathtaking. The good is a distant star. We navigate by its light, even though we never arrive. Most modern people resist this idea. They prefer moral relativism. What's true for you is true for you. Or they prefer algorithmic certainty. If enough people agree, it must be good. Murdoch believed these positions are comforting illusions. She argued that goodness is not relative, reality is not optional, and the moral life requires something bigger than our ego's preferences. The good is not a thing we possess, it is a direction we face. It is a compass needle inside the soul. And becoming moral means learning to orient ourselves toward what is more real than our fantasies. But what does this mean practically? Let me offer an image. Imagine you are deep in the woods. Night has fallen. You're lost, confused, disoriented. And suddenly, through the branches, you see the faint outline of the North Star. Do you reach the star? No. But you orient your path toward it. That orientation, The decision to walk in its direction is the moral life. Not perfection, orientation. Not achievement, direction. Not virtue signaling, vision. Murdoch believed the good calls to us, quietly, persistently, through moments of clarity, beauty, and love. And to respond to that call, we must learn the discipline of paying attention. But there is something else we must confront. The ego's fantasies block our view of the good. So let's turn toward the enemy of clear vision, the illusion-making self. Part 7. Why the ego blinds us. The Murdochian diagnosis. Murdoch didn't believe humans were naturally good, nor did she think humans were naturally evil. She believed humans are naturally self-centered, not malicious, just trapped inside our own point of view. The ego is like a tiny room with walls made of fear, insecurity, assumptions, projections, desires, resentment, vanity, defensiveness, craving, identity, narratives. It is a claustrophobic place, and we spend most of our lives inside it. Murdoch's startling insight: ego is not a moral failing, it is a perceptual distortion. We don't see the world clearly because the self is constantly in the way. Let me show you how this works. Example: the misunderstood co-worker. A colleague interrupts you. You feel dismissed. You feel attacked. Your ego quickly constructs a story. They're disrespectful. They're competing with me. They're arrogant. They're trying to undermine me. But a deeper, slower attention might reveal they were stressed. They were preoccupied. Their child is sick. They didn't even realize they interrupted. It wasn't about you at all. The difference between these two interpretations is the difference between ego vision and moral vision. And this is where Murdoch's philosophy becomes revolutionary. Goodness is not primarily a matter of will. It is a matter of vision. If you see clearly, you act compassionately. If you see through ego fog, you act selfishly. Moral improvement is learning to see better. Let's go even deeper. Example: the romantic projection. You fall in love, or think you have, but often what we fall for is not the person, but the fantasy we create around them. Murdoch would say, we love inside the fantasy our ego constructs. To love truly, we must see the other person as a complete, complicated, independent being, not a character in our internal movie. This is why Murdoch said, love is the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real. Let that land. It is extremely difficult to truly accept the reality of another. The ego always tries to bend reality back into its own shape. But goodness requires bending ourselves toward reality instead. And this leads us to Murdoch's boldest idea. Love is not emotion. Love is clear vision. Part 8. Love as seeing the other person clearly. Love for Murdoch is not passion. It is not desire. It is not attachment. It is not sentimentality. Love is the act of noticing, attending, perceiving, respecting, acknowledging, understanding another person as they truly are, not how we want them to be, not how they make us feel, not how they fit into our story, but as themselves. Imagine this moment. Evelyn sits across from her younger sister. They've argued for months, misunderstood each other, wounded each other, both certain the other is blind or stubborn. But one evening, Evelyn watches her sister talk, not through the lens of resentment, but with genuine attention. She notices a quiver in her sister's voice, a sadness behind her defensiveness, a fatigue in her eyes, a vulnerability she had never seen. And suddenly, the story Evelyn constructed collapses. Love replaces projection. Seeing replaces judging. Compassion replaces ego. Murdoch would call this a moment of moral attention, a glimpse of the good shining through the fog. Love is not an emotion toward someone. Love is a way of seeing someone. This is why she believed love is the foundation of morality, because morality begins with vision. But here's the tragic part. Modern society destroys our vision. Let me show you how. Part 9. The Moral Crisis of Modern Life. Murdoch didn't live to see smartphones, social media, algorithmic feeds, viral outrage, or identity performance. And yet, she predicted our crisis with eerie accuracy. She warned that modern culture would inflate the ego, encourage self-absorption, reward superficiality, amplify fantasy, distort reality, reduce attention spans, replace contemplation with consumption. We live in the world she foresaw. Algorithms don't care about clarity, they care about engagement. And what engages us? Anger, comparison, identity conflict, outrage, self-righteousness, sensationalism. The ego is the most profitable part of the human psyche. So we are constantly fed fantasies that validate the self. You're right, they're wrong. You're superior. Your tribe is noble. Your opponents are monsters. Modern life incentivizes moral blindness. Murdoch's philosophy offers a way back. Slow down, look carefully, attend to beauty, attend to reality, attend to others. Let the ego shrink, let your vision expand. This is not poetic, it is practical. Let's bring it into everyday life now. Part 10. Murdoch's Moral Practice for Modern Humans. Murdoch didn't believe in quick fixes. She didn't believe in motivational slogans. She didn't believe in manifestation. She believed in moral discipline. Not dramatic, not heroic, but quiet, daily discipline. Let me walk you through how it looks in real life, not as a list, but as lived stories. 1. Pausing before reaction. Imagine you're about to fire off a heated text. Your ego is flaring. Your story is running hot. Murdoch would pause. The ego interprets quickly. Reality reveals itself slowly. You place the phone down, walk away, return with a clearer mind. That pause, that is moral action. 2. Seeing the person behind the label. Online, You see a stranger express a political view you find offensive. Your first reflex: they're ignorant, they're dangerous, they're stupid. Murdoch asks, what pain shapes their voice? What fear? What longing? What experience? She invites us to see the human, not the label. This is not softness, it is clarity. 3. Learning to sit in silence. Murdoch believed silence is a moral practice. In silence, the ego stops performing. The self softens. Vision becomes sharper. In silence, we begin to see truth that noise conceals. 4. Seeking beauty as medicine for the soul. Beauty unselfs us. A sunset, a forest, a painting, a piece of music, a poem, a cathedral, a child's laughter. Beauty pulls us outside ourselves into something larger. Beauty is not decoration. Beauty is therapy. Beauty is moral training. 5. Asking, what am I not seeing? Every conflict, every resentment, every misunderstanding is an invitation. Murdoch would say, assume the fog is in your mind first. This isn't self-blame, it is humility. It's the willingness to see. 6. Letting go of the fantasy of perfect goodness. Murdoch believed perfectionism is ego in disguise. You cannot be perfectly good. You can only be orientated toward the good. You only need to take the next clear step, not achieve, not perform, not display. Just see a little more clearly today than you did yesterday. That is moral progress. And now, having explored the ego, attention, unselfing, love, and modern chaos, we reach the emotional heart of this episode. How Murdoch's philosophy can transform your life today. Let's go there. End of part 2. Joey, when you're ready for the next movement, which will dive deeply into healing modern relationships, overcoming resentment, seeing clearly during conflict, Murdoch's guide for daily moral clarity, and the spiritual beauty of humble vision. Part 11. How clear seeing transforms relationships. If you take nothing else from Iris Murdoch's philosophy, take this. Most relational suffering comes from misseeing. We don't see the other person. We see our fear, our insecurity, our expectation, our story. Think about the last argument you had with a partner, friend, sibling, parent, co-worker. How much of your pain came from misinterpretation, ego sensitivity, projection, assumption, story creation, jumping to conclusions, old wounds, colouring new moments? Murdoch says, we suffer not because others are evil, but because we cannot see them clearly. Let me show you what she means through 3 modern examples. 1. The partner you misunderstood. You come home from work exhausted. Your partner barely looks up. They're quiet, withdrawn. Your ego, are they upset with me? Did I do something? Are they losing interest? Are they punishing me? But attention reveals a different reality. They're anxious about their job. They're worried about a relative. They're overwhelmed. They're tired. They're scared. They're lonely. Your ego's story blocks the truth. Murdoch's answer? Look longer. Look deeper. Look without assuming. Seeing clearly often reveals love where ego saw threat. 2. The friend you grew resentful toward. You text a friend. They don't respond. You feel ignored. Your ego instantly constructs meaning. They don't value me. I'm always the one who reaches out. They must be annoyed with me. But attention, real attention, might reveal they're grieving something silently. They're embarrassed by something. They're depressed. They're overwhelmed. They didn't know what to say. They thought they were the burden. They didn't see your message at all. Most resentment is misseeing. Murdoch invites us to reality, not fantasy. 3. The parent you judge too quickly. We all carry childhood narratives, disappointments, old hurts, moments of misunderstanding. But Murdoch challenges us to ask, what was happening in their inner world at the time? What were their limitations? What were their fears? What truths was I too young to see? What sacrifices did I overlook? This isn't about excusing harm. It's about seeing reality more fully. And in full reality, compassion arises almost naturally. Murdoch believed the more clearly you see another person, the harder it becomes to resent them, because clarity reveals suffering, humanness, complexity, depth. Resentment survives only in the fog. Part 12. Clear Seeing in Difficult Times. Murdoch's Method. Let's imagine something real, a heated disagreement, a moment where emotions spike and clarity collapses. Murdoch gives us a way through these moments, not by suppressing emotion, not by forcing positivity, but by turning our vision outward. Here's her step-by-step moral attention process. Step 1. Notice the ego's fantasy. Ask yourself, what story am I constructing right now? Murdoch believed that naming the fantasy weakens its grip. Step 2. Pause, even 10 seconds. The ego reacts instantly. Reality reveals itself slowly. A small pause creates moral space. A breath is a moral act. Step 3. Attend to the other person, not to the story about them, to them. Their face, their posture, their tone, their stress, their longing, their pain, their humanity. Look for the person, not the projection. Step 4. Ask the Murdoch question. What am I failing to see? This question destabilizes the ego and invites truth. Step 5. Allow love to be a form of seeing. Murdoch believed love is not a feeling, but a capacity, to see more of the other than your fear allows. Listen for their wound, see their vulnerability, recognize their limits. Suddenly, the argument changes tone. Walls lower. Misunderstanding dissolves. Humility appears. This is the fruit of attention. Murdoch believed the moral life looks like this: less certainty, more curiosity; less defending, more perceiving; less reacting, more attending. Part 13. Clarity as a spiritual practice, without religion. Murdoch's philosophy feels spiritual, but is not tied to any doctrine. Her God was not a supernatural being. Her God was the good, the transcendent source of truth and moral beauty. This is why she believed the moral life is fundamentally contemplative, not performative, not ideological, not dramatic, contemplative. Let me paint this more vividly. A person sitting quietly at a window looking out at the evening sky is doing moral work, if they are using that moment to see more clearly. This is an astonishing idea, that clarity itself is spiritual, that attention itself is sacred, that perception itself is moral. You don't need a temple. You don't need a ritual. You don't need a creed. You need only the courage to see without ego. This practice changes everything: conversations, relationships, judgment, politics, parenting, friendship, forgiveness, self-understanding. Let's explore how. Part 14. How Murdoch's philosophy heals modern life. Every modern wound has a Murdochian antidote. Let's walk through the biggest ones. 1. Identity politics and polarization. Clear seeing. We flatten people into categories. Murdoch gives us the antidote. Attend to their particular humanity, not their group, not their label, not their tribe. Them. 2. Social media narcissism. Unselfing. Scrolling pulls us inward. Beauty pulls us outward. Spend time with art, nature, music, poetry, silence. Let beauty shrink the self. 3. Outrage addiction. The pause. Outrage is instant. Reality is slow. Murdoch's pause breaks the cycle. A breath is a rebellion against outrage. 4. Loneliness. Seeing others clearly. Loneliness is not just being alone. It is feeling unseen. When you learn to see others, you become the kind of person others feel safe with. Your attention becomes a gift. 5. Resentment. More complete vision. Resentment thrives in narrow perception. Murdoch widens perception to reveal the full reality of another person. Compassion follows naturally. 6. Meaning crisis. Orientation toward the good. In a world without clear meaning, Murdoch reintroduces a compass. Face the good. Walk toward clarity. Your life will align. Meaning is not found. Meaning is perceived. Meaning is what emerges when we see the world truly. Part 15. The aesthetic life as the moral life. Murdoch believed morality and aesthetics, goodness and beauty, are inseparable. Why? Because beauty trains attention. Beauty unselfs us. Beauty pulls us out of the ego. Beauty widens our vision. Beauty reveals truth. She once said, "Beauty is the only spiritual thing which can make the self at once virtuous and happy." Think about that. Beauty does what willpower cannot. It makes goodness feel natural. Let me illustrate. You're walking in a forest. Light falls through the leaves. Shadows move with the wind. For a moment, you forget yourself. Your ego dissolves. Your anxieties soften. Your mind quiets. You are simply present. This presence is moral clarity. Beauty is not decoration. Beauty is a doorway. Beauty is a teacher. She believed the moral person is someone who seeks beauty intentionally as a daily discipline, not to escape life, but to see it. Part 16. Murdoch's Practical Clarity Practices for Daily Life. We've explored the philosophy. Now let's translate it into a lived practice you can begin right now. These are Murdoch-inspired daily clarity practices, but I'll weave them as stories rather than lists, true to your preferred style. Practice 1. The Morning Window. Imagine beginning each day not with your phone, but with a window, a moment of stillness, a moment to let the world present itself before the ego wakes up. Murdoch believed the day begins morally when you begin with attention. Practice 2. The 3-second ego delay. Ego reacts in an instant. Clarity needs a moment. Before responding, pause. Just 3 seconds. This pause transforms relationships. It transforms days. It transforms lives. Practice 3. The compassion scan. When someone irritates you, don't react. Look for the wound. Look for the fear. Look for the exhaustion. Murdoch believed everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see until you learn how to look. Practice 4. The beauty dose. Every day, seek something beautiful. A tree, a painting, a poem, a piece of music, a child's laughter, a quiet sky. Beauty dissolves the ego. Beauty restores clarity. Practice 5. The "What am I not seeing?" question. This is the heart of Murdochian wisdom. Ask it whenever you feel anger, resentment, certainty, judgment, superiority, fear. This question reorients your mind toward the good. And each time you return to it, you become a little less blind. Part 17. Reflective Summary. A gentle gathering of the journey. Let's gather everything we've explored tonight, not as an academic list, not as philosophical jargon, but as a quiet weaving of insight, something you can carry with you. 1. The ego is a storyteller, not a reliable witness. It reacts quickly. It misinterprets easily. It protects itself fiercely. It paints the world in self-flattering colours. Murdoch taught us that morality begins when we begin to question the ego's stories. Is this true? Or is this my fear speaking? What am I not seeing? That question alone can save relationships, dissolve resentments, and bring us back to reality. 2. Attention is the foundation of goodness. Morality is not heroic, not dramatic, not theatrical, not ideological. It is perceptual. It begins in how you look at people, how you interpret them, how you attend to their humanity, how you notice beauty, how you sit with silence. Attention is moral training, and the world you attend to becomes the world you inhabit. 3. Beauty unselfs us, and unselfing is moral liberation. A bird on a wire, a child laughing, a tree bending in the wind, a painting that makes you pause, music that dissolves your racing mind. These moments aren't just aesthetic, they are moral oxygen. Beauty pulls us out of the cramped room of the self into an open field of presence. When the ego drops away, reality comes into focus, and goodness follows naturally. 4. Love is the clear vision of another's reality, not projection, not desire, not fantasy, not possession. Love is seeing another person as they truly are, fragile, flawed, complex, wounded, beautiful in ways you can only perceive when the ego grows quiet. Love is attention. Attention is love. And that is why Murdoch believed love is the primary moral force in the world. Not willpower, vision. 5. The good is real, and goodness is orienting ourselves toward it. You will never reach goodness in some final perfect way, nor do you have to. Goodness is not a trophy. Goodness is a direction. It is the distant star we navigate by, the quiet light that calls us to see more clearly, to love more deeply, to attend more honestly, to perceive more truthfully. Orientation is enough. Each day, a little more clarity. Each day, a little less ego. Each day, a little more reality. This is the moral life Murdoch invites us into. Not perfection, attention. Not heroism, humility. Not certainty, curiosity. Not performance, presence. This is her gift to us, a way to walk through a noisy, confused, ego-drenched age with gentleness, clarity, and grace. Thank you for joining me for this deep, quiet journey into the mind of Iris Murdoch and into the inner landscape of our own attention. If tonight stirred something in you, a softening, a widening, a recognition, an urge to look more carefully at the people in your life, then Murdoch's voice is alive within you now. Carry it forward. In the way you look at others, in the way you interpret your own mind, in the way you seek beauty, in the way you allow silence, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you ask, what am I not seeing? Clear seeing is a lifetime practice, but each moment of clarity makes the world just a little more humane. If this episode added meaning to your day, helped you breathe a little deeper, or offered a new way of being, I invite you to subscribe and continue this journey with us. This is Philosophy for Better Humans, and I'm Charles Sebastian Whitby. Until next time, May you look gently, see clearly, and allow the quiet sovereignty of the good to guide your steps. Good night.